Hi everyone, welcome back to 33 Founders. I am buzzing with excitement that you're here because I'm here with Tammy Tibbetts, the founder and president of She's the First. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you on Skype. Thanks for having me.
So Tammy, I actually want to rewind about 10 years back to your time in Mrs. Smith's English class. She used to pass out your papers as an example of A+ work, and I think that was, as you've shared in previous talks, a big moment for you realizing, hey, I'm really good at this and I have power to make a difference. Take me back to that class.
Yeah, it was actually 14 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I'm getting old. That was freshman year. I was so shy in high school, and I really didn't know after middle school what I was good at. Frankly, I didn't think I had many talents at all. And here I was sitting in class, and this teacher believed in me, and she was using my work as an example for other students. And she would photocopy my essays, and at first she'd take my name off, but then eventually people figured it out. And then it was by her publishing me, in a sense, in the classroom that I thought, oh, maybe I should consider joining the school newspaper and being a journalist and having my words published, in media. And little did she know, or I realized, that would spark my career path.
When you think about that, the reason I wanted to start with that story is how important it is to have someone who believes in you and who wants to give you a shot, because that's exactly the foundation that you guys have at She's the First. I don't want to take away from the work you're doing. Can you describe not only what She's the First is and how it works, but what it means to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, She's the First it's so relatable because education should be universal. And in that same vein, we can all of us who have had an education can relate to something that we've been the first to do. Many times it's the first in your family to graduate from high school or college, like I was, first generation college student. Maybe it's the first to move away from your hometown to pursue a job in a big city, or first to go study abroad and explore the world. Whatever that first is, I've seen our supporters around the world and our scholars in these low-income countries really unite over a shared belief in the importance of education to unlock all of the other opportunities in a lifetime. So what She's the First does is fund girls who will be first in their families to graduate from high school, to just complete a basic education in their families. And in that process, we are shaping our next generation of global leaders, not only through these scholars, but also through this robust network of campus chapters we have across the U.S. who are fundraising and advocating on their behalf.
I think it's best described by Deepa in Nepal when she said, I woke up and realized that the world was behind me, fighting for me, cheering for me, setting me up to thrive and succeed. This is a place where I will leave my mark, and when I've done everything I needed to do, they will say she's the first. Mm-hmm. That's such a mind-blowing statement. How do you come to work every day with those stories just bubbling inside of you? What does that make you want to do with your organization?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned Deepa, and anyone can watch her recite that poem she wrote at she'sthefirst.org/poem. And I first heard her perform that when I was in Nepal this February, and it gives you goosebumps.
It really did. I have in my notes from a couple of days ago her poem, and oh my God.
Yeah, we're getting one of those quotes made up on a sticker so that all of our supporters can just put it everywhere to inspire them and to just build the movement. So when I come into work every day, we have photos all around our office of our scholars and our campus chapter students. I also am Facebook friends with a number of the girls who have graduated, both internationally and within the U.S. So there's just a constant reminder that no matter what challenge I'm facing for the day, that because my efforts are being multiplied, hundreds of thousands of times over by all of these student leaders within our organization that together we are stronger and we will find a way. And sometimes it will take 9 no's, but the 10th is going to be a yes. You need to just be persistent and believe that you have something really incredible to share, particularly in my role of fundraising, is not having any fears or intimidation whatsoever of going up to the most powerful or affluent people in New York City and saying, we need your help. We've come so far, but in order to help the rest of these girls and meet our goals, we need you to join our movement.
I think I'm so glad you worded it that way, because it lends to another insight from one of your scholars, Eli, who you and I are just talking about, when she said, life is not the way you live, but it's the way you handle it.
Mm-hmm.
How does a She's the First scholarship change these girls' lives?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that, and I know firsthand what it's like. I don't know their lives exactly. It's very different from growing up in the U.S., but I received a scholarship when I was in college. And just like my scholarship, the money to go towards my education was critical at that time. But what has been the most valuable to me is the lifelong network that it gave me of mentors and peers. My co-founder, Kristen, I met through that scholarship program. So similarly, She's the First scholarship, I mean, simply put, it's the money for the present moment so that they can go to school, so that they can have a tutor, a mentor, a uniform, and all of those other necessities. But in the long haul, it's also being part of a network of other scholars around the world, of these campus chapter peers, of our corporate partners and our board members and advisors, and the people in places of power right now who will help open doors for them when they do graduate, so they can find career opportunities and higher education scholarships as well.
And one of your goals with She's the First is to break the cycle of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so struck when I was reading about this, just comparing it to life growing up in the U.S., because going to school for these girls means living healthier, getting married later, having kids later. Those are all huge. Can you share a couple of stories of some of your scholars and how this has impacted them?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have so many stories, but today I will pick Myra, she's the first scholar who graduated from our Guatemala partner program. And she is quite the entrepreneur. She started a artisan craft business, a beading business. And what she does is hire women from her community. Many of them are mothers of the girls she went to school with. And they bead bracelets, which are sold in their community, which has a lot of tourists coming through who buy them, or they've made bracelets, including for us, on commission. And when those bracelets are resold, it's providing an income for all of those women's families. And for Myra. Myra is the oldest sibling in her family, the first to graduate, and now she's earning money that she's putting back into her family. And maybe her younger siblings won't need a scholarship because she'll be earning the money where she can help them pay for it. So that's a perfect example of supporting the girl, giving her access to school, but then making sure that she didn't fall risk to dropping out, as many girls do for economic reasons. If their families don't have the buy-in to support, to see that there are long-term gains of them graduating, there's so much pressure on the average girl living in Myra's community to just go and work in the fields and start earning something. But if they make it to graduation, they will have much higher, 10 to 20% higher income in their future jobs.
What got me so excited initially about She's the First is, of course, the mission to help each of the scholars. It's huge, it's life-changing. But you also committed yourself to changing the life of every young girl who wants to support the scholars. Tell us about your campus chapters and how that's really developing an important sense of leadership for rising women.
Yeah, the campus chapter network is really special because it really came about in the most organic of ways.
Yeah.
If your viewers don't already know, She's the First just started as a YouTube video. And at that time, in November of 2009, college students, mainly because I was pretty young, 23, so I still had my own natural network on Facebook that I was sharing this video with. They were still in college. So they started organizing events and fundraisers on campus and would share what they did. Tie-dyed cupcakes in particular became one of the big popular fundraisers.
You're a fan of those.
Yeah, they're just so bright, colorful. And I mean, cupcakes, period, do so well on social media. So they would post pictures of these cupcakes and how much money they raised. And then students at other schools, their friends, inquired, what's this all about? What's the recipe? And then they replicated it and they did a fundraiser, whether it was a cupcake sale or something else. So, little by little, we were seeing this ripple effect of college students who don't really have much of a disposable income, putting their time and their talents together to have an event and raising a little bit of money from a lot of people, and that was enough to provide a scholarship. So as that started to grow, we then put, at that time we were just volunteers, I didn't work full-time for She's the First until 3 years ago. So we started creating like guidebooks, like PDF documents that would help the students organize brand guidelines so that everybody was using the same logo and the same colors to give it some cohesiveness. And, it just, like I said, time goes by so quickly, and little by little, eventually we had a structured program that is now run by our campus program coordinator, Katie. And these chapters, 125, we'll probably have 150 at least by the start of this new school year. And an average chapter raises $1,000 a year, every year. So it's just this growing, sustainable, recurring source of scholarship funding, which has obviously, the end result there is directly supporting our mission of sponsoring these girls. But in the process, I've seen how these student leaders are transforming themselves. And so many, both women and men, because it is co-ed, we've got quite a few young men who've stepped up. They've told me, or they've answered on our surveys, how they've found more confidence, more skills in public speaking and delegating and leading conversations and meetings that have led them to get internships and jobs that they're really fulfilled by. So I see it as this, like, I always say She's the First is like a coin, and there's two sides. There's the domestic side of what we do and the international. They're both equally valuable, and they're so intertwined with each other.
So you guys have now funded 486 scholarships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you still celebrate every new one?
We celebrate, quarterly. I would say Kristen disperses money to our partners, and we activate more scholarships. So I guess we should like ring a bell or something. It's hard. The bigger that you get, I guess we have bigger goals where every single one, we don't like stop and have a party, but we collectively review our impact metrics and the number of scholars we have every week. It's on our website homepage, it's on a sign in our office, so we constantly see it, and I think that reinforces the responsibility that we all feel for, so that not only we can continue to support them, but we can reach our goal, by the end of this year, of sponsoring 600.
And you guys are still a team of 3, right? Full time?
Yes, but our 4th starts next week.
That's great.
Development. Her name is Perry Rizzo, and she was a lucky find, so we're really thrilled that she's joining our little staff family. We also have 5 interns this summer who are pretty incredible too.
I was just going to say, how do you do it with 3 people?
Being efficient. I think there's so many technology tools that enable us to better organize and work with volunteers. And it's really there's no choice. There's such limited funding for general operations and staffing that we've we've had to really maximize every minute that we have.
I want to go back for a couple of minutes, Tammy, to the way that your journey has evolved. You went from being an editor at 17 to starting She's the First. Take me back to the night in your apartment when you guys were sitting with cold pizza boxes and you realized, all right, things are changing now.
I don't even know if I realized it was changing then, because I had this idea to create She's the First as just a video PSA, public service announcement that we could post on.
It's a great video. I loved it. Still very impactful.
Yeah. Now our video skills have gotten much better. So when I look at it, I like cringe. It's a little embarrassing, the skills that we had. But you know, it was good enough. And that's something I really believe in, that you can't let perfection get in the way of better. You just have to do it and then improve, as you go along. So when I had that meeting in my apartment, I invited friends to collaborate with me and talk about, what would this video script look like? How would we shoot it? And I didn't realize then that it would ever become a nonprofit organization, that it would change my career path or any of that. I had hoped that we would be able to fund a few girls to go to school. But it was such a small first step.
When you think about the first steps, what is your most defining memory from the early days?
My most defining memory is probably when I thought of the name She's the First, because I knew I wanted to sort of, inspired by a project I did at work at Hearst with 17. It was called donatemydress.org, and it was a directory of where girls in financial need here in the U.S. could find places for a prom dress for free, or women with dresses in their closet could see where they could donate. And I felt like, this directory concept, why can't I replicate that and create a directory of schools where girls were in need of scholarships? And then people would watch this video, go on the website, click on some links, and donate. So that's how it began. I lost my train of thought there. What was the original question?
What the defining moment was in the early days.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then, and coming up with the name. So I had this concept of, building this directory model, but what would I call it? And at the time, I was involved in, from a journalism reporting assignment on Liberia, I started volunteering for an organization in Liberia, traveling there. And the president of Liberia is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first female president in all of Africa. And then the girls that I met there were going to be the first in their families to graduate. So this theme of being a first, and both ends of the spectrum of being president and then just finishing high school, and then how the possibilities, as I was saying in the beginning of the interview, are endless once you have that education as a foundation. So She's the First popped into my head, like as I was taking a shower one day, and as soon as I toweled off, went to the computer, went on to see if the domain was available, and then bought it on the spot. Didn't know what I would do with it, but I figured, well, at least my $13 or whatever, however much is worth it just to put a placeholder on that idea.
So 486 scholarships later, it was worth the $13.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorite stories that you've shared, you speak often to many different audiences, which I love because your story can resonate with anyone, was how being named most shy in high school was such a game changer for you. And it reminds me of an insight from Scott Crabtree when he shares that saying that this is just the way I am is a cop-out. This is just how you are today. You can change that. Tell me about changing that and gaining the courage to raise your hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that silly little yearbook superlative was a catalyst for so much change in my life. And I think this was before Facebook and social media really existed for high school students. And I don't know if it's a tradition that still exists in high schools today.
I think so.
Succeed, most likely to be president, and then most shy isn't that flattering. And I mean, think of how many shy teenagers do you know? Like, this is a very ordinary, common thing. Most of us as adults kind of snap out of it. So my story is not unique in that sense. But for me, it was the breakthrough of really becoming the kind of leader that I thought I could be if I simply just raised my hand and used my voice, or in the case of then pursuing journalism, use my words to amplify the voices of women who were committed to really important social justice causes. And if I hadn't taken like what was the very weakness of me or the part of me that I didn't like the most, and if I hadn't decided I remember when that picture was taken for the yearbook, I decided to go to the photo shoot for it because I was determined to make it the biggest irony of my life. And
I always thought that was ironic that they would ask the person who was very shy to.
Yeah, and I did. I mean, I made it the biggest irony of my life, I think. And in a way, I'm grateful for it because it's given me this ability to sort of bond with a lot of teenagers and even adults who can relate to standing in their own way and realizing that for many of us in the United States, oftentimes we put up our barriers and hold ourselves back from reaching our true potential, whereas the girls where she's the first scholars, for them it's different. From birth, they have been born into situations where there are barriers against them through poverty, through the lack of, their geographic location is several hours walking distance from the nearest school. And given that we don't have those kind of obstacles, it's such a shame to be the one who holds yourself back. So to let go of those fears and just do the thing you want to do, and ask questions, find a way. Don't think that your voice doesn't matter, because it really just takes one voice to
everyone has a Mrs. Smith.
Get a lot of other people speaking up too, and then together what you're able to achieve is just off the charts.
One of my favorite ways that you've elaborated on that was when you explained that it's easier to plan a legacy than a career. Tell me more about that, because I think sometimes we get so caught up with what am I going to do today that it just stresses you out and you don't do anything.
Yeah, so going back to the most shy, I mean, that's when I realized that, okay, the legacy that I've left in high school here is being most shy. I don't want that to be the legacy of my life. And a lot of times, we think, oh, legacy, that's something that you figure out when you're in your 70s or 80s, the end of your life. But if you think about it now, like if you want your legacy to be that you were part of the generation that made universal secondary education possible, then every day, like do something to contribute to that. Or maybe your legacy is more general, just empowering women and girls. And there isn't one career path or one industry or one job title that goes into that. There are many things you could do under the umbrella of a legacy. And it's just not worth putting so much pressure on yourself to be like, what's that one career or one job I want to have? Because the reality is that many of us are going to have jobs that don't even exist yet. We live in such a fast-paced entrepreneurial world that just start with one dream and know that along the way you'll probably discover others, and that's okay. Like you can go with the flow, and everything you do in one job, even if it's your very first job, like being a waitress while you're in school, or camp counselor or whatever, all of those skills, those are earlier jobs I had, they all transfer into the next one. And for me, being a journalist, all of those skills transferred into being an entrepreneur.
When it comes to going on that journey, you give a great piece of advice to young girls, adults, everyone, that you have to be your biggest fan. Can you give me a couple of examples of instances where you've had to be your biggest fan? Because it's a lot easier said than done.
Let's see. I think I love running outside of when I'm not sitting at the desk, doing my emails and work. It's such a release for me to either just turn on a
You're a
podcast or
marathoner. You did the New York Marathon.
I did one marathon. That was like my one of my crowning accomplishments in life as someone who couldn't run a mile in high school. But on those runs, like the long runs during marathon training, I had a lot of time to think. I had a lot of
A
time
lot of time.
to talk to myself. And like literally, when you're running 16, 18 miles, you get a little delirious. So you start talking to yourself. And, I would, if I was trying to, close a sponsorship deal or a funding ask that we really needed, and I was just uncertain how it was going to go, I would give myself a pep talk. And I think that's important, is to find that space. And maybe it's when you're doing something athletic and physically testing your strength. Remind yourself that you do have it within you to overcome whatever obstacles you're facing in your day job or with your side projects.
When it comes to She's the First, how have you evolved since the earliest days personally?
That's a good question. Let's see. I think that, well, definitely I have come to love and appreciate fundraising as an art. And in the
It is
beginning,
hard.
I think human nature, we're naturally a little timid or hesitate to ask people for things, especially money. A lot of people don't like asking others for money. And the best fundraisers, I've learned from them firsthand or by reading their books. And you're not asking for yourself, first of all. You're asking for a cause that you really believe in. And when you ask someone for something, you're giving them an opportunity to feel that same fulfillment that you have for being a part of something greater than yourself. And if you can create benefits and a shared value, asking isn't taking something away from someone, it's giving them something even more valuable in return. So that kind of mind shift was a big one. What else have I learned? I've learned how to prioritize better, that you can't do everything. So you got to build a team of people who are more talented than you, who you can agree on a shared vision, and then just get out of their way and let them do their thing. I've learned how to communicate more effectively, especially with people older than me, running a board, and to attract more powerful people to your work. They have many responsibilities, so you need to know how to write emails that are short and professional and to the point. So I've just gotten better at more concisely messaging my points and my needs and my deadlines to even to volunteers, so that you can learn you can't do everything yourself anymore. Once you get to this point, you have to learn how to make it easier for other people to help you.
Going back to the first lesson that you feel it's really benefited you in fundraising and asking people to support She's the First, what have you found moves people to action?
Stories. And that's where my journalism background really comes in. Kristen as well has had a journalism background, so she's such an equal partner and visionary. And she's the one who directs the short films that you see on our website. And it's sharing the stories of our scholars, of our campus chapters, and that inspires people to want to get involved.
All right, 2 more questions. At the end of the day, Tammy, I know this is a very big question, but how do you feel when you're getting ready to go to bed at night with everything that She's the First has become?
I think people, because the outcomes of my work, our scholars are so phenomenal. I think people expect when you work for a nonprofit that you go to bed feeling like, oh, I made such a difference in the world today. But you really don't. I mean, it's just like,
You should.
I feel very fulfilled. I feel so much purpose every day. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm a morning person. Like, I set an alarm clock just in case, but I pretty much
Me
always
too.
just, my body wakes up and I never drag my feet getting out of bed. Like, I'm always legitimately so excited to come to work. Um, but at the end of the day, I see myself as a businesswoman and I have financial metrics to hit and, um, I'm thinking like a CEO, not like Mother Teresa necessarily, even though I know that there's very positive world outcomes of my work. The skills are really the same, and the challenges are the same. Just instead of working on projects that would sell a lot of advertising for a magazine, I'm doing it to raise a lot of money to send girls to school. So when I go to bed, I'm thinking, okay, what are the big things I need to do tomorrow? I'm not so much dwelling on the wins that we've already had. I'm thinking about what more we need to do.
Perfect transition. Fast forward 5 years, and we're walking in New York, and there's a huge cover story about She's the First. What do you want the headline to be, and what do you want the picture to be?
Hmm.
Tie-dye cupcakes are acceptable.
No, it would be, I think it would be a picture of our scholars and like maybe a graduation photo. Oh, I know. Maybe the future president of the United States. Maybe she'll be a woman. I don't know. But she would be visiting maybe one of our partner countries, and then one of our scholars would get to meet, or any world leader, but say it was the president of the United States was paying a visit to one of our partner countries, and he or she would want to meet a really brilliant girl who was working hard for education, and they chose that she's the first scholar. So there'd be a picture on the cover of like Time of our scholar with this powerful world leader, and I think that would symbolize that she's the first is reaching girls who are literally going to be the ones who are leading the change in their communities around the world, and that anything is possible for them.
I gotta say, that's a good one. That was on the spot. That's a great story to come up with. So I'll have to hold you to it now.
Yeah, we'll see.
What's one question, Tammy, that you've always wanted to be asked, personal or professional, about running that you haven't been asked yet?
Hmm. Um, hmm.
Let the inner journalist come out.
I always, if you, anyone can run a marathon, literally anyone. And I'm not like the fastest person by any means. But like I said, I couldn't run a mile in high school. And when I was running the marathon, like it brings tears to your eyes. Like you see people who are blind running, you see people who do not have four limbs, that are missing. They're, in the wheelchairs that you what do you call them? Like
You wheel, yeah.
yeah, and they've got like these tremendous muscles, and they get themselves to the finish line through the strength of their other body parts, even if they don't have working legs. And anyone who has the will to do it, will find the way. And in the process of running 26.2 miles, and more importantly, training for that, you get to know yourself so well. You get to know your body. You get to know every muscle, how to take care of yourself, how to prevent injury. It's really more mental than it is physical, because you have to keep your brain engaged as you're spending like 4 hours just constantly moving. And I think it's not something I would do all the time, because I think it is very taxing on your body. I think it's better to just run shorter distances more consistently as a lifestyle, but to do a marathon and teach yourself that you really could do the thing thought you couldn't is such an important lesson. And maybe for you, that's like if you're a swimmer, like doing a triathlon, it doesn't have to be a marathon, but whatever metaphorically your marathon is, whatever challenge it is, maybe it's hiking Mount Kilimanjaro, like something I never would want to do. I'm not a hiker, but finding what that challenge is and working towards it is definitely a good use of your free time.
I think instead of doing an athletic challenge, you can do another marathon, and I'll just make 26 batches of tie-dye cupcakes. And
that works.
That'll be my marathon. Tammy, I can't thank you enough for being with me today. Can we close with you sharing how everyone can get involved with She's the First and just follow what you guys are doing, be a part of the journey?
Yes, please go on she'sthefirst.org and link up with us on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And sign up for our newsletter, which is in the top right-hand corner of our website. You can enter your email, and that way you'll get a monthly message from us and all of the latest and greatest updates on what our students are doing.